Hey everybody, Mr. Judson here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some work with the graphing calculator today, and we're actually going to do the same three problems that we did last time we met. We're going to do we'll do the New York condo here as a sample problem, but then what we do with this, we're going to do the same thing with the Walmart and the men's basketball and the women's basketball. And so the idea is we're going to use our calculator to find an equation of a line that best represents this data right here. And then once the calculator does its job, we'll be able to make a prediction on what that New York condo should cost in 2020. Now, the thing we should understand about the graphing calculator is it has a built-in procedure, they call them algorithms, where it's going to get the right answer. All right, we had to do a guess at what we think was the best fit line, and so the answer we got at the end, remember it was something like $3.263 million, something like that, about 3.2 million. That's really just the best guess for us, and the calculator will find out exactly what the answer should be if the trend continues. That's always a big question, if the trend continues. There's a lot of things that can happen that can affect that. So when we check our answer here against what we did by hand, if we got close to this, we should feel pretty good about that answer. All right, so a couple things about the graphing calculator. One is, for some of us, this is probably going to be pretty new. I think most of the people who had Mr. Folks and used the Inspire, you might be aware of some of the things you can do, but you just haven't done them with the TI-84, okay? The nice thing about having this on video is if you guys are sitting there punching buttons on your calculator while I'm going through this, if I start getting ahead of you, you can always hit pause and then back up and watch it again, and you're in control of that. Okay, and that's going to be a common theme with videos that we have, is that you can always pause and take some time to write a few things down and then start the video again and not feel like you're getting left behind. You're in control of the speed as to how this thing goes, okay? So to start this problem, what I need to do is I need to get the data into the calculator. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to hit, well, first of all, let me back up a second. There's no guarantee that all of our calculators have the same information on it. So what I want us to do is I want us all to clear everything off, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do second, anytime I say that, I mean the second function button. You'll know that when you hit that, you should see an up arrow. There we go. And then I'm going to hit the mem button. Okay? Second mem. And what we want to do is we want to reset the memory. So I want option 7, so I'm just going to hit 7 on the keypad. I want all RAM, so I'm going to hit 1. And this is kind of that last question, are you sure you really want to do this? Yeah, I'm sure. So I'll hit 2. So normally what I do when I'm clearing memory is I just go second mem 712. I don't even read the menus anymore. I just kind of do that real quick. You don't always want to do that because sometimes you may have changed some settings on the calculator and you don't want to lose those. You want to hang on to it, okay? So I would not do this very often. All right, so I'll hit clear just to get rid of that message. If you don't know this, we call this the home screen. Anytime you have something on there that you don't want to see, you hit the clear button. If there's lots of things, the clear button will first erase the line that you're on, but then the second time it'll erase the entire screen. All right? So to get this data into our calculator, and these steps you probably want to write down because this is something we're going to do over and over and over again throughout the school year, all right? It's a common procedure. Right now we're doing them for straight lines, but later on we'll do them for parabolas or quadratic equations. We'll do them for exponential functions. We're going to keep on revisiting this idea throughout the school year, all right? So I'm going to write this stuff down. I'm going to hit the stat button. And what I want to do is I want to edit information. So I'm going to go to option 1. And what I should see here is list 1, list 2, list 3. If I arrow out, I think it goes up to list 6. Okay? This is kind of like your XY table. This is where I want to put my information in. And so my x values start at 4. I'm counting by 2s up to 14. So I'm going to go 4, enter, 6, enter, 8, enter, 10, enter, 12, and then 14. Okay, so there's my x values. And now I'll arrow over to the list 2, which will be my y values. And I'm going to punch these numbers in. So 0.38. I don't think you have to hit the 0. If you notice, it didn't put it in there anyway when I hit it. So I could just go 0.6, 0.84, 0.98, 1.2, and 1.5. Now, as I'm doing this, you guys should all be doing this with me. Okay? Anybody who's just sitting here and watching, I guarantee you will forget the process. But if you got that calculator in your hand or on your phone, whatever you have, if it's on your computer screen, you know, you might have to shrink this stuff down and get your calculator over on the other side and enter this stuff. You know, keep on hitting pause and keep up with me as I do this, okay? Really important that you guys are doing this with me. Anybody who sits and watches, I can almost guarantee you will forget, all right? And if you're sitting there going, oh no, I'll remember, you're like all the other people who thought they would. And they forgot too. So make sure you do this with me, okay? All right, so I've now got my data in the calculator. What I need to do next is I need to tell the calculator to plot these points. That's what we did on our paper and pencil. We plotted the points first. And so there's a certain way to do that. Right up here where the y equals button is, this is usually where you go to graph things. But the second function option to it says stat plot. And that's what I want to do. I want to plot these stats. Okay, so I'm going to go second stat plot. And I can plot up to 3 different sets of points. It's pretty rare that I would plot more than one. Very rare, okay? So I'm only going to go into plot 1. And when I do that, first thing I need to do is turn it on. So you can see that the on is highlighted, but it's not selected yet. I need to hit enter, and now I've selected on it. I've turned those points on, okay? The type of graph, that first one there is just plotting points. It's a scatter plot. The second one is plot the points and connect the dots, if I want to see it that way, or I can do a bar graph. I believe these are called box and whiskers. It starts to get into some statistical information that I'm not familiar with. We will always just do a scatter plot, the first option. And our x values come out of list 1 and list 2. Now, if for some reason, you know, somebody went into stat and edit and you saw that list 1 and list 2 are gone and you had to actually start with list 3, well, you'd want this to say list 3 for x and list 4 for y. Okay? But the default is to always make it list 1 and 2. All right? If we reset our memory, which we did, that should have fixed that. If it didn't, we can still fix it, but we got to do some more things to it. Okay? As a matter of fact, I'll show you something here real quick. The last item, what kind of mark do you want to do? Do you just want to do a dot? Do you want to do a plus sign? Or do you want to do like a little box? I always do the box because that way when it draws the line on there, I can still see where the data points are. If a line goes through that little dot, I won't be able to see that data point anymore. So I choose the box. Let me go back to stat for a second and into edit. And you guys could do this if you want. You could do this with me on your calculator. So people want to get rid of stuff and they want to delete their information, and what they do is they go up here, they actually arrow too far. Let me go back. And they get right there. Oh my gosh. There. And then they hit the delete key, and watch what happens when I do this. List 2 is gone, right? I now only have list 1 and list 3. So back when I did my stat plot, I would want to say my x values come out of list 1, my y values come out of list 3. But really we all want it to say 1 and 2. And so the way that you get that back in there, it's kind of like if you want to insert something on the computer, you want to insert a picture or something like that, you go second insert, see how it pushed list 3 over? And what I really want is L2 there. And if you look down here, the second function option for the 2 is L2. So if I go second L2, I don't know where that Z came from. Let me delete that. Okay, it says L2 now, so I hit enter. And not only did I get L2 back, but I got all my data with it, which is kind of nice. I mean, I thought I was going to have to punch all that in again, but now I don't have to do that. All right, so I've got my data in the calculator. I've told the calculator to plot the points. I want to show you another way that you could turn those plots on and off. If I hit the y equals, see up here at the top how plot 1 is highlighted right now? That means that that's on. If I just arrow up and hit enter and then arrow back down, I have now turned those points back off. They won't show up on my graph. Okay? So rather than going through stat plot, this is a quicker way. I can just come here, go up and hit enter. Now I'll see my points. Okay? So let's think about what we did with paper and pencil. You know, I had to set up a coordinate system, and I had to label my axes and make sure that everything was set up right. So what I need to do is I need to go to the window. The window tells how much of the XY coordinate system do you want to see. And you can go from 0 to 1,000,000 if you want. You can go from negative 2 million to positive 2 million. You can choose whatever you want for values here. But here's what I see. For our years, we've got all positive numbers and we go up as high as 14. So if I said let's go from 0 to 14, that would make sense. However, I know that this is x equals 30, 2020, it's 30 years later, so maybe I want to go a little bit farther. Maybe I want to go to 32. So let me back up and punch in 32. And then the x scale means what do you want to count by? How much do you want each tick mark to represent? I'll count by 5s. Okay? So, oops. Hit enter, now I'll count by 5s. All right, and then the y values, well, these are pretty small numbers, so I don't need to go very far. If I went 0 to 2, that would probably be good enough, although I remember our answer from the other day. We got $3.2 something million. So maybe I want to go from 0 to 5. So that'll get me up to $5 million. Okay? So if I hit graph now, what I should see is a perfect setup for this data, and I should see those points in there. So let's just check that. Hit the graph button. There's my data points. Now I'm not going to see labels like price of a New York condo or time in years. I'm not going to see that on here. I just have to know that's what my graph represents. Okay? All right, so now what I want to do is, instead of drawing what I think is the best fit line, I want the calculator to actually figure it out. What is the best fit line? Okay? And so we're going to tell the calculator to do that. So I'm going to do second quit. What second quit does is it always takes you back to your home screen. Your home screen is where you do all your adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, stuff like that. It's also the spot where you would give the calculator commands to perform something. All right, so I'm going to go second quit. I'm at my home screen. If I want to do 5 times 78, I can do that. I don't really care right now, so I'll clear it off. But this is where I do all my math calculations. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to tell the calculator to find the equation of the line that best fits that data. And so the place where I'm going to do this is I'm going to go back to the stat button. This time I want the calculator to calculate something. All right, so I want to go over to the calculate menu. That's not calc for calculus or calculator, it's calculate something. Do some work for me. And what we want to do is we want to do what's called a linear regression. The word regression means basically find the equation. Okay? It's just that sometimes it's a line that we're looking for. Quadratic means parabola. Sometimes that's what I'm looking for. Or a cubic. There's a sine curve down here somewhere. There's exponential functions. There's all kinds of stuff. We're interested in option 4. Okay? A linear regression. By the way, I'll just kind of mention this real quick. if you go down, I think it's option 8, there's another linear regression. But instead of doing y equals mx plus b, I know it says a, but you know, we think of it as mx plus b. They just chose a different variable. They're doing b plus mx. And why is that? It's a European thing. It's something they do in Europe, and it actually makes a lot of sense to me. You know, normally if we graph this line, we start with the y-intercept, and then we use the slope. So why not write the y-intercept first, and then use the slope? Start on the y-axis here, and then do your rise over run. It kind of makes sense. So that's why Texas Instrument put that in there, is it was requested by the European countries. And I think it's one of those spots where they might be doing things a little bit better than we are. For some reason, our books are all y equals mx plus b. All right, so I'm going to go 4, option 4. And this will now automatically look in list 1 and list 2 for those xy values, unless I tell it differently. If I want to look in list 3 and 4, I would have to put L3, comma, L4 right after this. Okay? But it's automatically going to look in list 1 and 2. I do want to tell the calculator one more thing though. Now, okay, I got to be careful because for you guys, this is a little bit different. You might have a newer version of the calculator than this version. Let me grab a calculator. All right, so I've got a handheld calculator here, so I'm going to do the same thing as well. I'm going to go Stat, Calc, option 4. And I've got a menu that's a little bit different. It says X list, Y list. See here when I hit enter, it already gave me the equation of the line. It told me what my A and B value is going to be. So your calculator might do this. It might be slightly different. You just want to make sure your X list says L1, that's where our X values are. Your Y list says L2, that's where the Y values are. But there's an important part here. You want to go down to where it says Store Regression Equation, R-E-G-E-Q. Okay? We want to put our cursor right there. I'm going to clear this off and I'm going to go back and get that command. So Stat, Calc, option 4. What I want to do is once the calculator finds the equation of a line, I want it to be put somewhere specifically. Okay? When you graph things, you hit y equals and y1 is the first location where you would type in an equation. I want our equation to go there. All right? So to get that, I'm going to go down to this key right here, the vars key. So I hit that. What I'm looking for is a y variable. Remember, write these steps down because you'll forget them. Okay? If you haven't been writing them down, you need to go back, rewind the video, watch it again, and make sure you have this down so that we remember it. Okay, so I hit vars. I'm going to go over to y vars. And what we're looking for is functions. Right now, it's the only thing we know. We don't even know what parametric and polar equations are. All right? So I'm going to hit option 1, and there it is, y1. So what this means is I want to find the equation and place it in y1. So on your calculator, if you have these other options, you need to put the y1 where it says Store Regression Equation. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go vars again, y vars, option 1, option 1. And now with the handheld calculator, you arrow down to the word calculate and you hit enter, and it's going to figure out the equation for you. Here I'm going to hit enter, and there's the equation. All right? So what that means is I'm going to put the number 0.107714 and so on in place of A, and I'm going to put a negative 0.0053 if I'm rounding to 3 digits in place of the B value. And when I look at my handheld calculator, it has the exact same numbers there. These now look close to the same. All right? So let's hit the y equals button and see if that information got stored for us. If I hit y equals, yep, there it is. I can see it. And I'm not going to say that these are exact values, but they're pretty good values. When you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 digits past the decimal, that's pretty accurate. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. okay? I'm pretty happy with 3 digits past the decimal. When you write things on paper, that's what we're going to do. We talked about this the other day, that we're always going to round things off to 3 digits past the decimal. All right, so if somebody typed in 0.108 and got rid of all those extra digits, that would be fine. Since the calculator did it for me, I'm just going to leave it there. So now I'm going to hit graph. And there's my line, and you can see that it's gone through some of the points, but not all of them. That's why I like the box, because if my line goes through the center of all those boxes, it'll fill them all in, and I know that's pretty darn good. Okay? So now what I want to do is I want to make this prediction. How much would the condo cost in the year 2020? Remember, that means x equals 30, right? It's 30 years after 1990. 4 is the year 1994, so 0 is the year 1990, and we're talking about 30 years later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my home screen, second quit, and I'm going to go back and get Y1 in here one more time. So I'm going to go vars, I want Y variables, so I'm just arrowing right once. And I'm going to hit option 1 and option 1 again. And I'm going to put parentheses here, and I'm just going to type in a 30. You guys remember how if f of x equals x squared, then f of 4 would be 4 squared, right? It just means you're going to plug in a 4 and do whatever it says. This is kind of like f of x. It's just our calculator didn't call it f, they call it y1. So it's y1 of x. And when you put a number right after that in parentheses, it means it's going to plug that back into this equation. So I'm going to hit enter and see what I got. $3.179 million. Now, if you remember, we got an answer that was about 3.263, something like that, million dollars. Let me grab it real quick. All right, so here it is. I got $3.231 million. That was the example that we did on Monday for third period, but Tuesday for fourth and sixth. I think in sixth period I got something slightly different because my points were slightly different. Remember, my line is a best guess, and so the guess that I made in sixth period was slightly different than the guess I made in third period. But I look at this and I go, okay, 3.231, here I got 3.179, that's pretty close. I feel okay with that. That's not bad. If I want to check my equation, go up here and look at the slope. 0.108. Okay, I got 0.111. Those aren't too far apart. That's pretty close. And my y-intercept, a negative 0.053. I got a negative 0.099. So again, I'm off by a little bit. That's because I made a guess. I'm not perfect. The calculator is the correct answer. So the closer you got to this, the better of a job you did on this problem, okay? Doesn't mean if you're not close you did it wrong. It means when you did your line of best fit, we were slightly off a little bit. And that's because we're humans. We're making our best guess, and that's okay. All right. So I have answered this question. Now, one of the things that we need to talk about is, how do I show this work? Okay, I've got the work that I did, in class, but how do I show this work that's coming off the graphing calculator? So let me show that to you guys real quick. I'm going to go ahead and start up another program here. This is Smart Notebook. It's something that I can write on and you guys can see. So anytime anything comes off the graphing calculator, and I'll get my graphing calculator back here where I can see it in a second. But what I want to do is I want to draw a box, and this box represents the calculator screen. It represents this window right here that we're looking at. All right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an XY axis in here. So there's my x-axis, there's my y-axis. And what we need to do is we need to write down what that window is actually showing us. What's the range of values? So let me get my calculator back in here. So if I hit the window button, my x-axis went from 0 to 32. There we go, I've labeled that. My y-axis went from 0 to 5. I've now labeled that. And then what I saw was, I saw some points. Let me go back to the graph. Now first of all, I'm going to draw a picture of the graph. And all I'm trying to do is say here that my work came off the graphing calculator. I don't care if I draw this perfect. I just want to draw a representation of what I see there. So it almost looks like that's in the bottom corner, and the line goes about 2/3 of the way up. So, whoops, let me choose a different color. So there's my line. And where were my data points? Just kind of right in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, there's a point, there's a point, there's a point, there's one, there's one, there's one. We had 6 data points, so I've acknowledged that. Do I care if those are exactly in the right spot? No, I don't. What I'm looking at is I'm going, oh, you used a graphing calculator, and I see your line with some data points. You must have done a linear regression. And you're telling me that that's what you did right here. Okay? And so now the answer, I'll look at this so that I can write this down. My answer is going to be y equals 0.108. So I'm rounding to 3 digits. I get asked this all the time in pre-calculus. Do we leave it as 7 or do we round up to an 8? Well, how do we decide that? It depends on the next digit, right? If it's 5 or more, you got to round up. So we're still rounding numbers the same way that we've been doing since grade school. X and then minus 0.053. There's the equation that I got. I don't have to write y1. I'm not worried about that. But when I plug in 30, y at 30, so let me do it on this one again. Oh, I'll go back to this screen. Second quick, I'll go back to my home screen. There it is. 3.17, I got to round up. So 179. So that equals 3.179. And there it is. I'm done. And you guys should all be saying right now, no, you're not, Judson. You're not done. I forgot something here, right? Hopefully in your head right now you're thinking, yeah, you didn't label it, Judson. Minus a half. Yeah, I got to label this. We're talking about money, and this is in millions of dollars. So what I want to do is I've got my piece of paper here where I did my New York condo. I just want to draw this picture, maybe right here. You can do it on the back if you want. And then here's the equation the calculator got. Oops, there you go. Here's the equation the calculator got, and here's what I get when I plug in 30 into that equation. And now I'm done. Now I could go do the Walmart problem. Okay? So you do it the same way, but you know, remember our Walmarts, you know, we had what, 3,000, 4,000 Walmarts? Our scale's going to change here. On the graphing calculator, I'm going to have to go from 0 to like 5,000, not just 0 to 5. I want to show you one more thing on the graphing calculator. Let me hit graph. There's another way that I could have gotten this number, but there's a slight thing you got to be careful of here. When you hit the trace button, what the trace allows you to do is to trace along the graph and see XY coordinates. All right? Now, right now, if you look up here in the top left-hand corner, it says P1. That stands for plot 1. I'm not on the equation, I'm on the points. So in order for me to trace, I have to be on an equation that I punched into the y equals location. I didn't punch it in, but it got put there when we did our linear regression. So I'm going to arrow down once. What that does is it toggles between the things that are showing here. You could arrow up or down. They both are just like toggle switches. Okay? So now it says y1 equals, and I can see the numbers from this equation. So now I know that I'm on that line. Okay? My cursor is. And I can move it around with the arrow key like this. I can go back. If I go up or down, I'm going to start toggling between. I don't want to do that. I want to stay here. So what I want is I want this x value to show exactly 30. And if you right arrow over, you're never going to get to 30. It's always going to be some decimal number. But you can just punch in 30. See, there it is. And now hit enter. And what it did is it took me exactly to that point on the line. So right here, we're at 30, comma, 3.178666667, which rounds off to this number right here. So that would be another way to find that. A lot of times people struggle with this, but it's because they forget about plot 1. You don't want to trace on plots, you want to trace on the line. And so when you don't get what you want, hit this down arrow once, and that'll put you on the line. If I go back and do that again, if I hit trace, so see I'm back on the plots, the moment I punch in 30, it kicks me out of the graph. That's how you'll know, oops, I forgot to arrow down first, all right? So two different ways to get this answer. Either do y1 at 30, which is kind of like saying f of 30, or go to the graph and trace out to that point. All right, that's what I have for you guys for today. So you're going to do this with the Walmart, the men's basketball, and the women's basketball. And again, you can just write right on the back of the graph that you've already done, or you can just kind of fit it right down in here somewhere. And what you want to do is as you do these problems, you kind of want to look at this answer and compare it to the one you got by hand and just get a feel for, you know, how close was I? Okay, I'm off by a fair amount. I got 0.111, and this is, I got negative 0.099. There's a difference there, but I feel like I did a pretty good job. I think those numbers are close enough that I think that's okay. All right? Okay, that's what we have for tonight. So you guys want to have this done for the New York problem goes in your notes. The Walmart men's basketball and women's basketball, we want to have that done before class on Monday or Tuesday next week. All right? For right now, I don't want you guys to worry about how are we turning in homework. Part of the problem is, and I need to figure this out, is we've got TAC where we put grades, but we're also going to eventually go to Schoology, which I'm told we have to put grades. But we have a different program that we're using where we will get our homework from that program, and our grades will be inserted into there. And so I'm just trying to get answers from everybody on how do these programs communicate? Do I really have to put grades in 3 different places? How does this work? And I was working today on the online program that we're going to be using, and that's not even that easy. It's a little complicated, and so who knows what we're going to do. I'm working on this, you guys. But we may do one thing for a while, and then maybe for a month, and then all of a sudden we're going to switch over to something else. I'll keep track of all the grades. You guys don't have to worry about that. But for right now, keep all the homework you do. Don't worry about turning it in yet. We'll get that figured out and taken care of later. All right, that's it. I will see you guys next week.